Here we are at 7 o'clock. Welcome, Phoebe, my regular. I love it that this is a person who is reliably here, and we are going to do a little live presentation by two weighty women. And I want to say I chose to begin there because I want to introduce my co-facilitator. This is Stephanie Mojita. Did I get it?
Yes, yes, correct. Thank you.
And Opeyemi Parham, and we are weighty women because the topic is going to be, I think, duty to beauty. Because what happened was in looking at weight in America and women as a topic, because of what Stephanie will be sharing a little bit later about their personal experiences, I thought about what it means to be a weighty woman. And I have been a weighty woman in other ways that mean that I have been arrogant enough to stick up for myself and get way ahead of myself and trip and fall with respect to medicine, and then see the sanctuary trauma. So there's where our medical racism experiences will touch base a little bit and overlap, because I described it as you're having enough trouble to begin with, but then if you cut yourself and you're in the water, there the sharks smell the blood and here they come.
That's
So
right. That's right.
let's just back up and keep it neutral for a minute and say for maybe 3 minutes, I want to share what I found, which was yeah, a little surprising to me with respect to the history of weight in America as described by, let's let's use DeepSeek, because when I do any kind of a search, I am very aware that the search engines are going away, and I would like help out there, folks, in where are you doing your research and how are you documenting that it's real? Because I got to say it, the G word, Google, is a monopoly. So it's really hard to get around that. And more and more and more, I found that it will not answer a straight, this word plus that word, weight plus women. It will send me on all of these rabbit hole adventures that are clearly led by the advertisers who are seeking my attention. So for search engines use, I have been using the AI out of China purely because of the CO2 footprint difference. I'm just saying that so everybody make your own decisions about how you interact with this. But I have found it is a fairly reliable. I used to check Chat GPT against this, but it's reliable enough that I am not checking them to see that they're saying the same thing anymore. And what it had to say about weight and women was in response to me asking the question, please tell me about the history of allopathic medicine and dieting for women in the United States of America from the turn of the century through the present. So that's what I asked. And what I got, which I summarized in a little YouTube video that's 30 seconds long, was essentially that, and we're talking about white women culture, right? I mean, it's America. We haven't included anybody else folded into this particular batter, period. The first time that weight and how much women weighed was used with consciousness at the turn of the century was about your duty to the country, not to be I'm going to say some hard things, fat, slovenly person because of resources. We were at war in 1917, right? It was the duty of a good American woman to be slender. Okay. Then the next round that came through was essentially when we got things medicalized. And when they became medicalized, we had a really ugly run in with amphetamines. We're still dealing with it, but everybody was taking amphetamines to stay awake, to do whatever they needed to do with their housework, and to diet. And they were and are addictive. So we have had a medical trust issue in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. All right. Then we went and switched into looking at essentially three pillars. We were going to look at what we put in our mouths. We were going to look at our physical health, and we were going to help people with therapeutic options for whatever narrative it was that they had to deal with to understand why their eating was somewhat disordered. Okay. That was a phase, and now we are in the brave new era of Ozempic and this whole category of medical intervention, pills, shots, whatever. I mean, they're shifting each year or two that affects your appetite and how much you feel full. So it works in a totally different way, but be very clear. It was working up here. It's not working at your, well, it is working at your gut, but it's working at your gut by affecting up here. So with that as a starting point, I want to say you are almost the exception that proves the rule, because you went on an adventure with a surgical intervention that isn't even showing up in the lineage of what American women did for ourselves or to ourselves or with ourselves to control our weight. The whole idea of whatever happened with you as a starting point isn't isn't big enough in the survey of how many women actually were able to access this to show up. So I want to start with you because it's filling in a bit of a gap. If you would be willing to share a little bit about how did you get to the point where you were looking at any kind of bariatric surgery?
So I first heard about bariatric surgery. For those who don't know, it's also called weight loss surgery. I first heard about it in 2002. I was going to, let's just say, a support group for people with food issues, and some people were starting to have the bariatric surgery, and they were losing weight and they were keeping it off. So I started doing research. Uh, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but healthcare in the United States is prohibitively expensive, and especially in 2002, it was next to impossible to get insurance to cover it, and I was a journalist, and I was very underpaid. So I tried many times over the years to get, a type of bariatric surgery,
Can
that
I
would
ask you to start with two things? One
Sure.
is your age when this was happening, and what your weight was, your weight
Oh,
range.
sure. So I started thinking about this in 2002. So I was 23 years old and I weighed 300 plus pounds when I
Okay.
started thinking about it. So and now so I had the surgery in 2022. I had it in Mexico in a very, very nice hospital. I feel like I have to preface my story by saying that because when I came back to the United States, I could not stop vomiting. I could not keep any food or drink down. And when I would present myself to hospitals in the Los Angeles area, the second they heard I had the surgery in Mexico, they would say, "Oh, you must have gotten it in one of those clinics or in a garage or something." No, I didn't. And they're like, "Well, the problem is you had surgery in Mexico." Well, the second hospital I went to, so my last name is Mojica, and I'm obviously part Hispanic. My father is, Hispanic and indigenous. He started asking me about my immigration status and said some pretty racist things that I can get into in more detail depending on what direction you want to go. But he pretty much assumed I had illegally crossed the border from Mexico to get medical care in the United States.
Oh my goodness. So pause there because I want to make sure that everybody who's listening, either live or any recording, can stay present with this, okay? Because this is the hard stuff that we talk about, and I want you to also be able to stay present with your own story. So I'm going to pause you and do that chant that I did last week for anybody who was here before. Don't numb to this, don't numb it out. Let it all flow in and out. You're strong enough to feel it all and let your heart alive. Yes, keep your heart alive. So I just want to pause and just recap that you went for medical care and you're not keeping anything down. I'm just reflecting how scary that must have been. And at the second hospital that you went to, so you're already what happened at the first one that you had to go to a second one? What
Well,
did they send you home with?
they sent me home and they said, "Oh, you're just vomiting after the surgery. Here's some, medication. Go home." I also want to, and this may be getting a little too complex for what we usually talk about, but I teach ethnic studies, and I've been teaching my students about intersectionality, which is a term that Kimberly Crenshaw. At the time, I had Medi-Cal, which is basically like Medicaid, and there was an because I had just come back in the country from a few years abroad. As an American-born citizen, I had traveled abroad for a few years, and so I had Medi-Cal when I came back in the United States. So there were intersectionalities at play with race, gender, and perceived social class that really impacted my care. So I went back from the first hospital. I was okay for a few days, and then I started vomiting again. And so I went to another hospital, and he focused on my immigration status.
That's the one
I,
you just described that accused
yeah,
you of not being from the US and having crossed the border to get care.
yes.
Okay, continue.
Okay, and then what happened was, I was like, "No," and then he started asking me, "Well, how did you get the money to pay for surgery when you're on Medi-Cal?" And I said, "I took out a loan," and I also told him I had a master's degree in international human rights law, and he immediately labeled me as delusional.
Oh
Uh,
my
he
goodness.
said, "People on Medi-Cal don't have master's degrees in international human rights law. I think you're mentally ill. I think you have surgery regrets and need antidepressants, etc., etc."
Wow.
So a lot of stereotypes are being made. It's very interesting to note that this man is also a person of color, but he's what's part of considered a model minority. He was an Asian man,
Yeah.
and he was really, just putting a bunch of stereotypes onto me.
Mhm. So
Uh,
when you were w I heard the did you actually get care at all? Because, I mean, it sounds like he was almost ready to refuse care to you. Did you get care in that situation?
well, technically yes, and it's probably because my white mother showed up at the hospital and really insisted on it. I was
And
kept
again, I
there.
wanna pause you there because this is also a truism that when we people of color need allyship, this is the kind of allyship we need. And that's showing up. And if you got the privilege, use the privilege. So your mother is white and she got more response than you would have been able to continue.
So she got limited response. It was very interesting. I don't want to get into her story, but she does have other identifiers that are prominent, but they still didn't take us very seriously. They kept telling her, "Oh, she's having surgery regret. Oh, we think she's depressed and that's why she's not eating." It wasn't like I wasn't eating. I could not eat. I could
Heard.
not keep anything down.
Yeah.
And they kept trying to say psychiatric care was needed, etc., etc. My mother's like, "No, she needs IV. She's dehydrating." And he was like, "I'm the doctor, ma'am. Let me do my job." And they wound up releasing me from the hospital after 7 days, and I was in worse condition than when I entered the hospital.
Mm. So continue because this is
Yeah.
now a part of your past. You live with chronic disability issues that are a bit of a snowball from this. So continue forward.
So basically, the timeline gets fuzzy because I was very traumatized. I was also malnourished, but my understanding is that, a few days later, I was not making sense over text messages. So my mother came to my apartment where I was living in LA at the time. And I could no longer stand, and my eyes were rolling around uncontrollably in my head. And they had to call an ambulance. I tried to tell her not to call an ambulance. I did not want to go back to hospital. I was not suicidal, but I said I would rather die than go through what I went through at that hospital again. And she insisted, so I went to the third hospital, and the neurologist in the emergency room saved my life. He said I would have been dead within 2 days from dehydration and malnutrition.
Hmm.
So yeah, and what happened was I had lost my ability to walk. I had this surgery almost 4 years ago. I don't walk on my own. I can walk very short distances in a walker. I have no peripheral vision, so I can't see like side to side. I can't cross the street. I basically have limited frontal vision even with glasses. And this is a side effect of my surgery, not necessarily anything anybody did. But I mean, sometimes I'm online at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because I have frequent bowel movements some days. But that's not anybody's fault. That's just the type of surgery I had. That symptom is not. But it's just a snowball. It all piles together, you know.
Exactly. And I heard this theme of the doctors looked at you and said, "Oh, she just regrets having the surgery. She just regrets having the surgery." So I want to talk to you now 4 years later about looking at what your choices were back then, and not about regret for the surgery, but what choices did you have and how were you looking at making those choices? Like there was something that got you up to the 300-pound mark where with your master's degree ready to go and move forward, but not a lot of money. Can you just talk about that part of your life a little bit, because that's the weighty woman part where we I want to go back to and look at some of my choices back there, but yours first.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about. I was talking with some women about this morning in a person support group I went to. So I thought I had head hunger because I was constantly hungry. Like when I weighed, my top weight was 378 pounds. I would say the average was 300. I weighed about 350 about 6 months before I had surgery. Even though I was paying for surgery, they told me I needed to get back down to 300 to prove that I was serious about making the changes, needed to have the surgery. So basically, what happened was, um, I was constantly hungry, and I thought, "Oh, I'm just an emotional eater. I'm eating away my emotions." Well, after the surgery, which when they remove most of your stomach, they remove a hunger hormone, ghrelin.
Yeah,
I forgot.
I can't remember it, but I know
I
what
can't remember how. Yeah,
yeah.
and most of the hunger hormone got removed, and I had to remind myself to eat. So it was a biological issue for me, but I also
Yeah.
did 25 years of intensive, let's just say, self-improvement work.
Yes, good for you. So this is the piece where I said there was a time before we got super medical again, when we were looking at um, calories in, calories out, and behavior. Like we were looking at what are the behaviors that we need to be doing for ourselves. I want to talk now just a little bit about what a culture does that is now moving again towards a very medical solution. So you got a surgical solution. In the grand scheme of things, I want to just check in with you about that particular choice. That choice, I say, with a cultural anthropology background, carries a lot of power to put yourself under the knife. Do you hear what I'm saying? As
Yes.
opposed to symbolically, as opposed to simply taking pills. So having done that with yourself, for yourself, to yourself, and then going back to the system and having them say, "Oh, you just regret what you did." Can you speak a little bit to that over the last 4 years? Because you do have a lot of physical consequences of the choices that you made, including at this point that you don't weigh so much
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, and I was talking to, this woman about that this morning. It's like when I weighed 300, 350, 378 pounds, it was hard to get around. Not as hard as it is now, but it was hard to get around. It was hard to breathe. I
Mhm.
was injuring my ankles. It would have been a matter of time before I wound up unable to walk on my own, but it wouldn't have happened this quickly. The eyesight things would have never happened. But yeah, it's just, I lost, 228 pounds from my all-time top weight, but it's like
Wow.
150 pounds of my average weight, but I paid a horrible price for it.
Mhm.
So it's like a Pyrrhic victory, you know what I mean? You win something, but you lose something bigger in some ways. So, sitting around regretting the fact that I had surgery is not going to change it. I will say, and this is something I've been doing a lot of writing about and trying to get some publications going about, is that I assumed that if I lost like even 100 pounds, if I got down to 200 pounds, my life would be perfect. The perfect man would be waiting, the perfect health. I'd be walking everywhere. I'd be doing this. I fell for the lie that, your life is determined by the number on the scale.
Heard. And I want to pause you there because what you just shared about, you made this choice and you are living with this choice, and consequently, to just be in a regret about it wouldn't help anybody. I made a choice, a suicide attempt that I failed at. Hallelujah. It had it had dire consequences to me with respect to my ability to continue as a physician in the capability I was as a physician. I don't regret that because of where I am now and what I was able to do that I would not have been able to do without that particular piece. Yes, there were other consequences. No, I didn't lose my peripheral vision type of things. But there are consequences that you are now living with forever. There are consequences that I am living with forever. And as one weighty woman to another, I want to say that one of the lovely pieces of being able to be in a culture that does share stories with each other, like we're sharing right now, is it can give other people shortcuts. They don't have to go through as much drama, as you or I did. They can learn and do their work in less time if if that is what they are open to be doing. So I am edutaining a lot. I choose that word because I want to do this in a lighthearted way. We have a lot of negative stuff in our world right now. I'm not wanting to feed the negativity. I'm wanting to share stories of resilience. And I see yours as a story of resilience. So I want to thank you. Tell us more about where you are right now because you are living with consequences that are hard. And you also have some benefits. You're not that particular weight anymore. What are you doing moving forward that is giving you inspiration and hope for your own future?
So, like I said, I teach ethnic studies in person. I teach English online, and I'm not speaking for any universities I'm affiliated with, but I do work in academia. I'm a finalist for a PhD program. I'm hoping to hear any day now whether I got in. I actually have a couple of articles that will be coming out about my experience. I'm trying to not only share the experience of all this intersectionality and medical racism, but just the
Mhm.
simple fact that anybody can relate to. I'm sure whether one wants to lose 5, 20, or 100 pounds, that losing weight does not guarantee a particular life. It absolutely does not. If anybody had told me I would weigh 150 pounds and be in the medical condition I'm in, I would have thought that it was a science fiction movie. But it's actually quite common that people wind up with life ending, life threatening, and life altering consequences from these surgeries.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I want to thank you for sharing that because it wasn't even covered in the scan of this is what America has gone through looking at women and weight. So that is something that is challenging to me as we look at the next chapter. I'm concerned about we're a mystery. That's what I'm going to sum it up by saying. We remain a mystery to conventional model of medical science. So everything that's happening to everyone born with a womb in the United States is experimental, and it's not a bad horrible thing. Don't ever try it. It just don't act as if there's information there that there isn't. There just isn't. It's kind of a black hole of no information, and we're all in a bit of a gamble these days. I think it's really important to look at who's going to benefit from whatever is happening. What's the risk benefit ratio to whoever is giving you that pill, has the scalpel in their hand, right? Or is suggesting that particular behavior for you to do. And as you so eloquently said, don't expect this change to change your entire life. Right? And I
Er,
think that is the other
Exactly.
thing about some of the weight loss over time that has been most effective, as far as most quick, is also got the highest side effect profile. The amphetamines in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? And the bariatric surgery, certainly. And we don't even know yet about the new category of the Ozempic products. We just don't know. They're brand new.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And I would say that, there's just a lot of misconceptions about people who are overweight. They're lazy, weak-willed, etc. And I like even when I weighed 300 plus pounds, I would often work 12, 14 hours a day. Still do, but yeah, it's just like there's just a lot of misconceptions about people, especially women and women of color, and women who might be of a different social class. And it's just I think I know it affects men, but yeah, and I would never tell anybody not to get the surgery, just please do your homework.
right. And in the chat, this comment about I not
Anhedonia, I
having
think it
thank
is.
you, thank you, because I can't say it at this moment, from Ozempic type drugs. There's so many interesting things about how Ozempic works that are both fascinating but also worrisome, because the way that it's working is it's actually convincing your body that you don't want to eat. Okay,
Yes.
your body finds food distasteful because you have triggered all of the things that make you feel distended and full in your head. You've triggered those things, and therefore your body feels full with very little food, and the more you get used to that, the less you're drawn to even eating. And appetite is not simply about food. So the
No.
anhedra comment has everything to do about the other appetites that you lose, just like an appetite for life and the smell, the taste, the sound of the world around you. This should not surprise any of us because of how we are all so interested in in antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. You know, we
Okay.
are a country that has become very comfortable with outsourcing our emotions to pills, and we are in the process of making that happen with our weight diet programs in an excited kind of a way, a very excited way. I was looking up what happened to us with respect to food in the 1970s because we weren't an obese culture. What was going on back there? And two very interesting things that you might have forgotten about. One was food was really expensive. All right, so
Yes.
you had to eat economically and efficiently. You couldn't afford there. Food was expensive. We didn't have a lot of junk food in the 1970, so you had to eat efficiently and economically. And number 2, everybody was smoking cigarettes.
Mhm.
Everybody was smoking cigarettes, and that is an appetite suppressant, tobacco and nicotine. So people did not gain weight because they were smoking cigarettes. So again, the side little pieces of our relationship to weight, another brief and shining moment of body positivity, which we just had recently, like a little blip on the screen, probably, 5 or 10 years pre-COVID and maybe immediately after COVID, body positivity in that we really were starting to appreciate large-bodied women who can do a lot of things, and they aren't blowing out their knees, and they are doing, this, that, and the other, and they are very bright, and it's not about laziness, as you said, but now we're in the era of Ozempic face and everybody pointing out on the celebrities, oh, who looks like they're taking this, magical chemical. So again, we're a culture that really is in love with silver bullets. We
I
we
agree.
want a quick fix, and if it's gonna take time and energy, it's much more challenging to do it, but we are becoming a culture who are interested in coaches, teaming up. Therapy is the other thing that I think is very interesting to see what's been happening with therapy. There aren't enough therapists for people who look like you and me and
No, there
have a
are.
womb and have a womb. period. So if every one of us were to want a therapist, we're not going to get it because they're just not out there. So peer support of many kinds is a great way to move these days, as certain programs like Weight Watchers fade away with the betrayal of people like Oprah Winfrey, who maintained that way for years and has gone on the Ozempic train. So again, really interesting to see how people are making choices, communicating our choices or not. And with that, I want to just sign us off and ask Stephanie if
Thank
you
you.
have anything else you would like to say in conclusion. This will be presented as a recording over on my YouTube channel with a couple of little snippets pulled out additionally.
I would just say, again, like losing weight, however one loses it, does not necessarily guarantee a better life in and of itself. I would just be mindful of that sort of thinking. And, I did plenty of homework before getting the surgery, but I think I did it with rose colored glasses. But I've also talked to a lot of people who said they didn't know my outcome was possible. They thought maybe the wrong thing would get cut or somebody would pass away. So just please, please, please do your homework. And Ozempic is also very concerning. But no, I would never tell anybody, don't take Ozempic or don't get surgery. Just please do your homework.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's our point is we want people to be educated about their choices, but know that you have choices and know the fine print in the agreements that you have. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
to our fan Phoebe, who was live and present with beautiful little hearts going up. I'm going to sign us all off now. Thank you
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.